you're an author, or you wrote a book or anything like that, I go, whoa. I did not. My name is on the front of the cover, but it does not say authors. It says written by Tim Brown and Erik Kratz. Should have said was there.
Well, look, we had Tim on to talk about this book and to talk about his other penmanship, and the stories that you tell, and that, as you're saying, that he puts into words. It's fascinating to talk about the catcher, because from an outside perspective, as somebody who didn't play the position, you sit there and you think about the backup catcher and you hear people. I'll give you an example, the Phillies now. Last year, people didn't want to trade Logan O'Hoppe because he was this young up-and-coming catcher. But it seems, and I got a lot of this through your book, how important it is to have a veteran catcher, somebody like Garrett Stubbs, and how important they are to the locker room and the team. How important is that for people that are listening? How important is it to have a veteran as a backup catcher as opposed to somebody young coming up from the minors?
It is so important. One, especially when you're talking about especially Garrett Stubbs, the guy had been with a World Series team just the year before. And you don't sit there and say, wow, Garrett Stubbs, he's old. And he's not old. He doesn't even really have a ton of experience in the sense of like 6+ years in the big leagues. But he has experiences of where the team wanted to go to. And if you sit there and you go, well, he did nothing to get the team there, then you clearly have not read the book yet. Because that's the kind of thing that backup catchers bring. And it's one of those things that it's actually the one position that analytics, while they try to dabble into it, they try to say, well, we want a backup catcher who receives the ball really well. Like he has to, well, yeah, obviously, like every position nobody's going to be like, well, we want a backup infielder who hits, but we don't really care how he fields. No, like there's prerequisites for positions. But if you're a jerk, if you're a team cancer and you're a backup catcher, you're gone. You're gone. They'll find another one. Not that there's all great ones, but you can't sit there and go, man, I got to be playing more. But you have to think in your mind, I'm the best catcher we got on this team, without ever letting anybody know about
it. And we had Garrett on earlier this year, and after having him on and then reading your book, it's like the light bulb goes off. Like all of a sudden you see, because like he's the guy, and the backup catcher is often the guy that nobody thinks about.
He's the DJ.
And yet he seems to be part of the glue that kept that team together, that kept it light when it was necessary, that kept the pitchers on task, that was ready if anything happens to one of the most important pieces on the team in JT Realmuto.
The most important person on the team, in my opinion, the most important team is your starting catcher. You name me a team that has a bad starting catcher, and I'll show you a team that does not make the World Series. You cannot have a bad starting catcher and make the World Series. You might make the playoffs. You have to have, that position is so important. And if that position is so important and JT Realmuto plays more consistently and more games than any starting catcher since Salvador Perez has had kind of some down years of not playing as much, JT's out there more than any starting catcher. And yet he's still only out there 135 games. If that position is so important, and I think everybody agrees that it is that important, you need to have a backup catcher that can step in and play on the days that JT can't play. And then you start talking about, I hate using different words like clubhouse guy and glue, but they're so applicable for the backup catcher, because I think too many times it's like when somebody passes away and everyone's like, oh, he was such a great guy. How many times have people ever pass away and they say, man, that guy's a turd? No, nobody says that. Just like if a guy is helping a team like Garrett Stubbs, he is a great guy. And I don't want to push that out there too much, but I know Garrett. I know this guy is exactly what you need. But I also know, Garrett, that when I text him after he hits a dinger against a lefty in New York and he puts the boys up by a run, like he wants to be a starting catcher, but he knows I get to go and I get to hang out and I get to cheer the boys on, maybe mix a little music on the DJ, maybe a little, call the guys out when you need it. It is such a role. And I think Tim did an incredible job of hitting on all the different roles and different stories in the book.
It's funny, for as much as I've grown up watching baseball, I always looked at the backup catcher as the guy that's there when the starter doesn't play. This book comes through how important the 21 hours that you aren't playing baseball in a 24-hour day are for the backup catcher. And, you talk about how they get more valuable with age. It just seems to be because of all the preparation. Can you talk about that, from the meetings you attend to how you deal with people emotionally, those 21 hours when you're not on the field? What is that for a backup catcher?
That you actually just brought up the title of my next book that I'm going to write, The Emotions of a Starting Pitcher. It's going to be a whole book about starting pitchers and the emotions you have to deal with. No, it's something that and I'm seeing it more now as a retired player, that I was completely focused and locked into my job as a backup catcher, or, when I was in Milwaukee as a starting catcher, because there's the blurred line is only the fact that I'm either playing for those 3 hours or I'm sitting and watching and wondering from the 5th inning on what inning I'm coming in, pinch hit, defensive replacement, whatever it is. And so the preparation and everything, you sit there, guys are like, oh, this guy, he worked so hard. To me, working hard and working on your nutrition, getting enough sleep, being physically ready is like where you start your day. That's not like, wow, I'm so much better, or this guy's so much better because he works so hard in the weight room and all. Like, that's where you start your day, because as a backup catcher, then you go, okay, if I'm not healthy and they call on me, now the starting catcher is going to have to play through an injury because the backup guy is not ready. Or I'm in AAA, which, most of my career I spent in AAA getting called up. If I'm not healthy down there, okay, they're going to go to the next guy. They're not just sitting there like, we really need Kratz's like 209 batting average on our team. No, they're just going to go to the next guy. And so all that stuff is like, to me, that's where you start your day. And then you talk about like preparing for the game and your scouting reports. I sat there when I was with the Phillies, 2011 to 13. We had Roy Halladay, Cole Hamels, Cliff Lee in the bullpen, Papelbon. We had Joe Blanton. We had Vance Worley. We had, all these names of pitchers. And I had to deal with all of them. And you say, well, you don't have to deal with them. Like, those guys are so easy. Yes, they're very easy because they're very, very good pitchers. And some days they were good, some days they were not good. But they all were different personalities in the sense that Roy Halladay and I spent, and Chase, we would spend, there's 5 computers in the video room, and we would sit there, and those guys are mutes. They don't say a word. I chat all the time, but when I'm in there, I'm just quiet. And we're on the computer doing our scouting reports, all completely different scouting reports, but all for the same goal of like, okay, well, what do I need to learn from this? What do I need to, so I see Doc working super hard. Okay. Getting ready. Then my day is, so I know my scouting report has to be spot on to what he's looking for. He says what he wants, and then I gotta work with that. Then Cliff Lee, the only time we ever did a scouting report with Cliff Lee, I go, why don't you ever do scouting reports? He goes, you know what? I think you guys do enough. I've seen how much work you do. I trust what you got. And so he trusted himself. But one time, his one scouting report, he goes, I'm never going to throw a fastball away to Giancarlo Stanton. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't want to either. I want to throw fastballs in, Cliff's cutter in, maybe drop a few breaking balls in there. And I go, well, why? And he goes, because if I throw a fastball out over the plate and he hits it, I might not live. If I throw one in and he hits it, it's just a homer. I'm still going to be alive. And then you go with a guy like Cole Hamels, who you come into the training room and you're like, hey, you want to do a scouting report? You want to go over these guys? He's like, nah, we're playing the Marlins. He's like, we got them. We know what we want to do. And then as you're walking out, he goes, hey, I want to just make sure that we're not going to throw Ozuna anything over the plate if, there's a base open. And, don't forget about Justin Ruggiano. He doesn't like change it. And by the next 10 minutes, he's gone through their entire lineup. But hey, you never tell Cole he doesn't want to do a scouting report because it's like kind of this like, I don't. So it's all crazy different personalities.
You talk a lot in the book about basically being a therapist for these guys. How in the world they are different personalities? I mean, we've all gotten to know in a tiny level how different those personalities are, from Cliff Lee to Roy Halladay to Vance Worley to Cole Hamels, to all of those guys are very, very different people. How do you, as a catcher, do you have to manage each one separately, or do they respect you enough to say, okay, you're the catcher, I'm going to make sure that I listen to you because you're the one who did the work?
I'd love to say they respect me. But I think there's some respect there. I think I saw it grow the more I played, but I also felt like the more I played, the less respect I wanted. Like, I don't want you to respect me. I want to get this right. And so it was something that if I'm wrong, I want you to shake me off. Like, I can't stand when there's like the old catcher who has a rookie on the mound. And he's like, yeah, you can't shake me off. Like, no. I want you to be comfortable. So that psyche, that therapist mode where you're sitting there going, yeah, I'm gonna do whatever it takes for this guy is so true. Like, you have to be able to coddle the guys that need to be coddled. You need to be able to throttle the guys that need to be throttled. And you need to just stay out of the way of the guys that have got it going on. And it's the best. I like the analogy you said. It's like a DJ. Like, you sit there and you're like, man, this is nice music. And then you look at the DJ. You never go, where's the DJ at? Oh, yeah, I like his music. No, you hear it first. And that's kind of how a catcher is. They're the best backup catchers. And even sometimes, your average hitting catchers, you never really see them until their batting average goes below 200. Then you're like, wait a minute, is he a good catch? Like, the best catchers stay out of the way. Martin Maldonado. Nobody would ever hear of Martin Maldonado if he wasn't hitting 160 in the Astros every week or every game that they only score one run. Didn't have to say, okay, well, the reason Maldonado's still in there is because of what he does for the pitching staff. And he finally wins a World Series. Now all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, okay, well, I understand what he does, but what he does, he's been doing for the last 12 years behind the dish.
So I got a quick question for you. You mentioned the shaking off of a catcher. First of all, is that frustrating for a catcher at times? And second, how do you deal with that now? We now have a pitch clock. The pitchers don't have the option to shake off, incessantly. They got a certain amount of time. Do the catchers sit there and kind of smile and go, yeah, now they have to do what I said?
I don't know. I think that's a personal thing. I think some guys, like I said, I don't need him to do, I am so good at being right. I don't need you to tell me that I'm right by just calling, just doing whatever pitch. Like, you throw the pitch that you are most confident in. And so for the most of the game, I'm going to sit there and give you suggestions. And if you shake off, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it afterwards. I'm not going to go out to the mound and be like, are you kidding me right now? You called this pitch? Anybody that questions pitch calling, unless you're talking to the pitcher and catcher, is towing a fine line, because a pitcher could call whatever pitch he wants. If he has 100% conviction in it, I am all on board with that. We would talk about it, but you don't have time to talk about it with the pitch clock. So you hit your little button and you go fastball and he says no, I'm going to go to the next one. PitchCom is only just fingers. That's all it is. It's just glorified electric fingers.
So, along the line of catchers as therapists and the mental side of the game, last year we had Nick Castellanos come here and struggle for a lot of the year. This year, Trey Turner. And so the conversation is, do you give him a day off? He didn't want it the other night, played, struggled, got a day off the next night. How do you handle the mental side of the game with the slumping players? How would you handle that as a backup catcher?
You handle it the same way you handle a pitcher. Like, for instance, you talk about Trey Turner, like he gave himself a day off by getting kicked out of the game after he had already made the errors. Like, you have to get to know these guys. And this is one of the things I really take pride in, is not forgetting a teammate. Not that I haven't forgotten them, but when you bring them up, oh yeah, I remember, I think we played together in AA or whatever. You have to learn these guys. And as a backup catcher, while it may not be your role every time, you don't just go to a team and be like, okay, guys, I'll take the guy who's struggling, and I'll take him under my wing. No, I don't have the answers. They're all people. Trey Turner is a person. Trey Turner is a competitor. Trey Turner is a father, a husband, and all those things. If you get to know the person, you don't necessarily have to help them through a slump. You don't necessarily have to be a hitting coach for them. Most people just need life coaches. They need that person that they can talk to, not talk to, or be talked at. It just really all depends. But obviously I can delve into the fact that Trey Turner is not hitting fastballs and not hitting curveballs this year like he did. And somehow he's hitting sliders and cutters way more than he did other years. All that's done in, a couple clicks of my computer, and I can see that. But how do you help a guy if you're on his team? Maybe you talk to other people that he used to play with. Like, what kind of guy was he when he was in LA? What kind of guy was he when he was in Washington? Like, I played with Jonathan Scope. Jonathan Scope got traded in 2018 to the Brewers. And I think, he's kind of had a middling role with us, because we had Travis Shaw and Mike Moustakas that would play second and third. And then we would bring in Scopey for when we faced lefties. And I think he started 1 for 15, and his locker was right next to mine. And he was bummed. Like he switched his number. He was going through it. And, for a little bit, I talked about the fact that, look, man, I know about not playing, and you're just not playing that much. It's not that you're not a good player. It's just, you're not playing much. And then, he still kind of struggled a little bit, and he was grinding. And so I took a printout. I got from our computer room. I hooked it up to the printer, and I printed out as many papers of his stats. So basically your stats take about this much space, and I just repeated it through thousands of times, and I printed it out and I put it up all over his locker, all his career stats, all his seasons, everything. And I was just like, now you can look at who you are. It's not who you were, it's who you are. And you'll go ahead, you'll be fine. It's just a visual learning tool. Did it help? I don't know if it helped. He laughed. So maybe that's all he needed.
But the more I hear from your position, and we've talked to a lot of catchers, especially catchers in the minor leagues, is you all seem to be doing that for everybody else. Who's doing that for you? I mean, because it's a tough job. You talked yourself about going up and down from the minors. You were in a lot of organizations. We talked to, I don't know if you know Nick Rickles. We talked to him about, he had a family, and how long can you do this? You're not making the kind of money that the stars are making, and you are moving around and moving your family. How do you deal with the day-to-day of all of that, everything that is in your life, while you're sitting there being part of the glue of the team and doing that for other people?
I think you have to be confident in yourself. I think you have to have a support network at home that helps you with that kind of stuff. I think, for me, my faith was a huge part of it, that I was able to understand that my worth was not in how I did at the field, but my worth was in how I interacted with people, how I had a connection with the people on my team. And I think I hope that's the part that people glean from the book is, yeah, there's some cool baseball stories. There's, I didn't really know this much about the backup catcher, but I hope people can take from it. Everybody can do this. Everybody can be a backup catcher. Not everybody wants to be a backup catcher. Everybody wants to be the starter in their life. But you know what? If you want to be the manager of the store you work for and you're only the assistant manager, be the best freaking assistant manager you can be. Maybe you'll never be the manager. But you know what? You can affect people's lives, whether it's the people you work with, whether it's your boyfriend or girlfriend or your spouse at home or your kids. And I hope that's what people can take from the book is that, yeah, that can be draining, but you're not constantly just coming in, taking people's burdens on. You're trying to create, if it's your job as a backup catcher to create a clubhouse culture, you're creating that culture just by the way you live. You don't live by taking on other people's burdens. You live by focusing on the positives and loving each person that's in there, not just the starters. Because I played with some backup catchers, not played with them, played against them because I'm the backup. I couldn't play with another backup. That would be really weird. Nobody would know what to do for 80 games of the season. But I've played against guys that their role, like they felt like their role as the backup was to like go up to Roy Halladay and be buddies with them. And, oh, I'm buddies with Cole Hamels and I'm going to be Cole Hamels' personal catcher. No, that's the starting catcher. The starting catcher is going to catch the superstars. You're going out there to give us the most we can out of Vance Worley, out of Kyle Kendrick, out of, Aaron Nola when he first gets called up to the big leagues, out of Josh Lindblom when he first gets called up to the big leagues. I can name tons of Phillies names that's your role. And that role, it could wear on you, but it's so much more rewarding than trying to figure out how to be a really good baseball player.
I found it interesting that you sort of started the book at the end of your career with the retirement and reflecting on the lessons from your dad. But at the same time, you were explaining things to your children. You had a quote there: after playing the game on your own terms, on its terms, you're able to leave on your own terms. What did it mean to be able to, after that crazy journey you had, all the transactions, to be able to go out with your family there and to explain to your kids what it all meant?
So awesome. I mean, I can't we were kind of shift the book in a little bit of a direction where it was going to kind of be the main part of the book would have been the Milwaukee season, but because we started in 19, how the whole COVID season ended and how there's still things from that season that I sit here and go, I could have never written this up to end like this. My plan was, as my career went on, as I got towards the end, I was thinking, okay, 2020 is the Olympics. I'm going to play in the Olympics. I'm going to win the Olympic gold medal, and I'm not going to come back to my AAA team. I'm going to take a vacation in Hawaii, to the point where I was on the Olympic qualifying team, and we were about to be, before COVID hit, we were about to buy our tickets from Japan to Hawaii. My whole family was going to be there in the Olympics, and we were going to take a 2-week vacation. Never been to Hawaii. Would like to go. Sounds like a really nice place. And we were going to spend time there during the baseball season, which you never get to take a vacation during the baseball season. And it was going to be a super wow, how awesome of a way to end your career. Well, you know what ended up happening? We got kicked out of spring training because of COVID. I drove 17 hours straight from Tampa to my house in Pennsylvania, and I got locked in our house for 6 weeks during COVID, whatever, the nonsense was that we had. And then I played a season kind of that the opening day, I think, was actually just yesterday in 2020. So, it was a crazy season. I would have never drawn that up, but I would have never drawn up over 100 transactions either. So to be able to come to the end of my career and console my sons. My daughter was super excited that I was quitting, not retiring, quitting, because she knew I was getting a puppy. But my sons were crying in the back seat of the bus driving back to the resort. Okay. Listen, the resort that we were staying on in Carlsbad outside of San Diego, that the team bought us a suite for my wife and me and my daughter, and my sons got their own room in this resort that had all expenses paid. Like the whole resort was just for us and at the time the Rays. And like we got to experience it together. Had I gone to the World Series with the Yankees in 2020, and you know I'd done the Olympics and then caught up in September, if I came back, like families can't fly on the team plane with the Yankees. Other teams they do, but not with the Yankees. Like I wouldn't have had that experience. We would have ended, whether we won or not. It would have still been a sad moment for my kids, not a sad moment for me, not a sad moment for my wife or my daughter. So it's something that was to be able to go out on my own terms when my whole career, starting from my first spring training on, when I saw the first kid I ever saw get released, get fired. And I was like, holy cow, that can happen. In the back of my mind, I'm like, oh man, I could be released. And I got released a ton. I never, I ended up quitting on my own, but it's such an amazing blessing to be able to go out on my own terms.
And now you've gone out on your own terms and you've had the opportunity to coach your own kids. And so what is that experience like? And why is it that catchers seem to be the ones that end up as managers?
Probably because we still need to get service time in the big leagues because we weren't athletic enough to get. No, I mean the easy answer to that is you see everything, and we've talked about it for this whole episode. You also communicate with so many people. You communicate with pitchers. You communicate with position players. Position players and pitchers, sometimes they may never do anything together, and that's okay. It's not a dysfunctional clubhouse. Everybody's just so locked in on what they need to do and who they're around. You surround yourself with like-minded people, and position players don't necessarily have that much in common with pitchers. They have days off. They can go pitch it. They can go golfing. Position players like, I got to get to bed. I got to do this because I'm back out there. And then there's Americans and Latinos. So you got to speak Spanish. I mean, you don't have to, but it helps. I mean, it helps get people into the team and feel like they're all part of the team if you're able to communicate with those guys. So then you become a manager and you know how to deal with people. Managing is really not X's and O's. X's and O's, like you can't make mistakes with that kind of stuff. Like that doesn't happen. You're not even going to be close to a manager. It's about how you deal with people. But coaching now, so I coached 2 years for the middle school, and we won one game in 2 seasons. And so I got promoted to the high school team. So that's how it works. In pro baseball, if you do bad, you get demoted. In high school and middle school coaching, you get promoted. So the one win, and we came within 1 win of the state championship. We had an awesome season this year at Dock Academy, and that to be able to coach my sons. Now my 14-year-old son is going to be a 9th grader, so I coached him in middle school 2 years ago, and I coached my sophomore, now going to be a junior, on the high school team this year. So to be able to do that is incredible. It really is incredible. I've given up opportunities to coach in the big leagues. I've gotten multiple offers of coaching in the big leagues that were really easy to turn down. Super honored to get offered, but really easy to turn down at this point in my career. I mean, this point in my life, because my kids are going to be out of school soon. Like my 14-year-old son has 4 more years, and then he's going to go to college. My 10-year-old daughter, who won the Phillies home run derby 2 years ago down at Citizens Bank, and will probably win it again this year down at Citizens Bank, I get to go and be part of that kind of stuff. I get to go and be a dad, and hopefully they remember me being around more than being able to take BP on the field, with whatever team I'm coaching. Although some days they're like, I wish we could still be out on the field taking BP. I was like, if you really, really need that, guys, I will make a call and we'll see if we can get out there. But I'm pretty sure we can just drive 5 minutes down the road and we'll take BP there and we're good.
Erik, it's so easy to see from the book that this book is so much more than just about a position in a sport and how you can apply this to your own life. But before I let you go, have you heard of Immaculate Grid yet?
Come on. I'm pining for a t-shirt. The only t-shirt of Immaculate Grid, just all me and all 9 grids.
So that's what I was going to say. So there's probably a lot of people, including me, who have used you in that Immaculate Grid, and we all have to thank you.
You are welcome. If you're not a rarity score guy, like some people aren't rarity score people.
I don't care about the rarity score, but
that's why you use me. The rarity score, you use me, and I'm okay with being used. It's totally fine. Plenty of big league teams used me for whatever it was that they needed. But yes, I was just on today. I think I got a text. Somebody used me for the Astros and Phillies, maybe, or Astros and Yankees. Yeah, I'm usually like a 0.2 or something. It's tremendous.
But you help make it all work for everybody, just like you did as the backup catcher. The book again is The Tao of the Backup Catcher, Playing Baseball for the Love of the Game. Erik Kratz, this was a blast. Thanks so much. Best of luck with the book, and we hope we get you again sometime.